How you guys doing? So, long time no see, but I really wanted to reflect on this, and I'm just going to roll the camera and let myself talk. So, we all get sick, and also there are holidays. Those are usually the days that we usually don't do anything. Most of the time on the weekends, we're probably doing some work, something that's considered work. Now, there's work, right? A lot of us have a 9 to 5, 9 to 6, but there's also other things that is work. You know, some of us consider yard work. Some of us consider doing some of our finances work. Some of us, like me, I've since graduating college always had other things going on. So I had work. You know, as much as some of those things I enjoyed them, but they were still work. So I thought about this the other day, and I said, when's the last time that I consciously took a day off? When's the last time I consciously took a day off? A whole day. Whole day. And the answer is, I don't know. Because again, we're not counting sick days or holidays, right? Because those are just sort of mandated by other forces that you're taking it off. And some of us, when we're sick, we still work. And some of us on holidays, we still work. But when's the last time you consciously said, I'm going to take a day off? For those of you who are Christians, you probably know where I'm getting at. And for those of you who aren't Christians, you've probably heard of the 10 Commandments. And I recently took the Fourth Commandment really to heart. For those of you who are not familiar, right, the first commandment, there's only one God. Right, the second commandment, you worship only this God. No other sort of idolatry, other types of worship. You only worship this God. By the way, this type of hand gestures really helps you remember. Third one, it's something that I've been watching myself doing too, is don't use the Lord's name in vain, right? Don't use God's name in vain. So 1, 2, 3, we could do this. What's the fourth one? I'll give you a hint. So let me read you the fourth one. This is from the NIV. The fourth commandment is, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. So, if you weren't a person of faith, you're like, yada, 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 you know, people go to church on Sundays, blah, 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 right? But what you realize is, if you consciously try to keep a day where you say, this is really my day off, anything that feels like work, I'm not doing. It's so healthy for the mind. It's so healthy for the mind. So I have been doing this for 2 weeks now. On the weekend, usually it's a Sunday, because again, you're going to church on Sunday, so you obviously can just say, okay, well, the rest of the day, I'm just going to do things that are fun and not do anything that I consider work. But some days, of course, you might have something planned on a Sunday, right? So then it's like, well, take a Saturday off. Or if you have something on a Saturday, because of what I do, I get to set my own schedule. I can take a Friday off. So it's been a profound thing to do. And the urge, of course, I fight it on those days that you would call a Sabbath. I fight it. And sometimes I want to do work, especially as it gets later on in the night. You're like, it's almost over. Let's just start my work again. But two things I learned out of really trying to keep a Sabbath. One is, I think you value the work again. I cannot believe this, but you truly value the work again after you don't do it for a day. Again, I'm not saying that's going to happen to you guys, because the things that I consider work deep down at heart are enjoyable. It's just through repetition and through the frustrations of life. Sometimes they're not as fun as before. But if you really force yourself not to do those things for a day, then you kind of look forward to it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you do find yourself knowing that now you only have 6 days. You have a little bit of a deadline, especially before your Sabbath. So I don't know if I'm more efficient or I just try to cram more in, which I guess is maybe a definition of efficiency, or it just could be I spend more time on the days that I am supposed to work, not goofing off and actually working. So I don't know if I can make the efficiency argument, but I'm tempted to argue in that direction and say it's made the other 6 days more efficient. So that's where I'm at right now. And I wanted to open it up for you guys because when's the last time you guys consciously took a whole day? And I'm almost sounding kind of woo. I'm sounding new age, right? Because new age is like, oh, I got to have like a self-care day, a me day. What do they always say? But all this stuff was talked about in the Bible, in the Old Testament, man. This was Old Testament, right? This is thousands of years ago. So in Wednesday Bible study, which I go to every Wednesday, shout out Pastor Mark. He mentions there's a scholar that talks about the 10 commandments. Yes, they're commandments, they're things you should do as a Christian. But this scholar says, think of them as the 10 tender commandments. They're not the 10 commandments, they're the tender commandments. And it sort of goes back to how Jordan Peterson used to, and some would argue still approaches Christianity. He's taken it more like a functionalist. It's like, no, there's a lot of good reason for all these things. So whether you believe that Jordan Peterson's actually a Christian, whether he's a believer, he always sees immense value in a lot of the things in the Bible. And so for those of you who are secular, or maybe you have faith and, you left the faith, think of the 10 commandments as the 10 tender commandments, the tender commandments. They're things, if you do, it's really good for your mind. It's good for your brain. It's good for your soul if you believe in that. It's just good for you living on this earth. Of course, we want to think beyond living on this earth, but it's good for you, even just for your little earthbound reign, so to speak. I made this little video. I might link it in the future. You guys can watch it, but I talked about this. I called it, remember there's like Pascal's wager, and I invented something called the Peterson wager. So this was a video I made earlier in 2020 before the unspecified thing that we can't talk from a origin of a country that's in East Asia. So there's a helicopter going by, so maybe I'll take the time to gather my thoughts real quickly. That shouldn't be the only way or even the best way to get into the Bible, but that is one way. That's how Jordan Peterson always sort of got people to think about the Bible. But think about the 10 Commandments and really think about why, just even from a functionalist or even from a just think about yourself. Self perspective, these tender commandments could really help you. And then for those of you who have faith, the other thing, and I was talking about this before church on Sunday, we have a little Sunday Bible study too. If you have a whole day to really reflect on your faith, then you reflect on your faith, right? You have a whole day. It's like if you're not going to do other things, then leave it to really process all the stuff you might have learned in church, you might have read in the Bible, you might have read in Bible study. It's a good little thing to do. It's just another way of slowing down. People who don't have faith would meditate. They might touch grass. Touching grass is good, by the way, for everyone. They have other sort of meditative, ritualistic activities, right? So for those of you who have faith, just think about it. It's a Sabbath, and it's a time to grow closer to the Lord. I always talk about community. I always talk about friendships. I talk about a lot of things that I think society needs to grasp and ponder over because there's issues. There's issues with all of that. And yesterday, yesterday. Is today? Yeah, yesterday. Wow, it's just Monday. By the time you guys see this, it might be Tuesday. But yesterday, I called a friend and we talked for like 4 hours. Because we haven't caught up in a while. And then I found out, unfortunately, he's going through a custody battle with his baby mama. It's just things we talked about years ago that it's not that I don't have interest talking about, but I think so many people have gotten it in their consciousness that I don't need to talk about it anymore. But yeah, he's like, man, he already is divorced once, so he tried again, but again, he's going through a custody battle, and yeah. Anyways, that's another story for another time. But we had to talk for 4 hours. He's a guy I care about. The day of the Sabbath, it's also a good time to connect with your community, connect with people you haven't talked to in a while. Like, think about, when's the last time you really spent time with your friends? Like, dedicated a day with your friends. Maybe a day that you really take off, you don't do work. That's a good time to just spend some time with your friends too. So, I'm only beginning to experiment with this. I'm only beginning to just think about this, reflect on this, and live this. But I can already see that this is not the solution, but maybe the start of some better habits to many ails that are making society more and more difficult. So I want to encourage all of you guys to try this. And for those of you who have been doing this all your life, you've spent a whole day every week off, just like really taking it off. I would love to hear how you guys did it. Was it just something you did from when you were a kid? You just kept going? I remember when I was in LA, I briefly lived with a Orthodox Jewish family, and their Sabbath was taken very seriously. Like, they didn't even use electronics. So they told me, they said, oh, Jerry, by the way, since we're not allowed to use electronics, remember not to turn off the lights because we can't turn them on. Or if you do turn them off accidentally, just turn them on yourself. It's like, that's very strict, right? But, there's differences between the Jewish faith and the Christian faith. But, like, that's how much they really honored the Sabbath. So that's another question for you guys. How far would you go if you were to try this? And if you do honor a Sabbath already, how much do you honor it? Like, do you not use electronics? Do you use electronics? Do you just kind of like how I define it? As long as it feels like, or just don't do it. Or like, do you say, well, there's certain things I kind of have to do, so like, I'll still do them. But like anything else that's like, it's not completely necessary, then I'm not going to do. So you just let me know. If you were to honor Sabbath, how would you honor it? And then if you already do it, how do you do it? Yesterday, I was just sitting there and I talked with my friend and I was doing other things. I was like, oh man, this is so helpful for the brain. So helpful for the brain. We live in such a hustle culture. I think 10 years ago, just having a side hustle was still, I wouldn't say rare, but you were definitely not in the majority. I think nowadays, the majority of people, especially in places like the US, the majority of people have a side hustle, if not 2 or 3 jobs, right? That's just where the world is, where the economy is. So maybe that's another thing you guys can tell me. Do you guys have a side hustle? Do you guys have a job / 2 jobs / 3 jobs? And have you been able to find the right balance? Are you inspired by this to maybe find a new balance? Because, I thought I had a balance, but then I realized, wow, it could be more balanced. See, like, even these words, they're new agey words, right? But if you look at them and try to use other sources to help you out, you can gain a very definitive little step, a little thing to try. Let me just read this again. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested in the 7th day, on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. So the final question for you guys. Obviously not everyone can have a Sunday off, right? So what day do you usually? The Jewish family I lived with briefly in LA, their Sabbath was, of course, either Friday or Saturday. I forgot. It was probably Saturday. You guys let me know. For those of you, maybe your Sabbath day has to be Wednesday. I know some people, man, I feel bad for those people, but they don't get 2 consecutive days off. So they have like a Wednesday off and a Saturday off. Man, those people, not good for the mind. So anyways, man, I talked a lot. Hope you guys are doing well. Just letting you guys know something I've been thinking about, a change I've been making in my life. And let me know, guys, what changes have you been making in your life? Okay, talk to you soon.